rolling. March 20th, 10:13 a.m. It's Wednesday. First compliance meeting I won't be attending at work. I'm out here walking. I've got probably a 22-mile day ahead of me. So I've budgeted about 6+ hours to do that. I'm actually just kind of arbitrarily walking over to my previous coworker's house, old coworker's house, to see his new place. He won't be there because he'll be at work, but 3 hours from now-ish, I should be rolling up there. And he has a Ring security system, and so I printed out this picture of the meme, if you're familiar, the Think About It meme, where the guy taps his head and gives you sort of that knowing glare, like, you know, if you know it, you know it. And if you don't, Googling Think About It meme will show you what it is. But anyway, he and I used to send that to each other all the time. So I printed out a big picture of it, and I'm going to go up to his doorbell, his automated camera doorbell thing, and show the camera that picture. And then he should get a push notification that there's been activity at his door. I remember him telling me a couple weeks ago, maybe last week, I don't really remember, that it was like ultra sensitive, and he would get these push notifications all the time. So unless he's fixed that already and made it less sensitive, that should be a pretty funny prank. Good-natured for sure. And it's going to be a long day to get there. It is just a little over, adjusting the mic real quick, it's a little over 10 miles. And then I'll come back, obviously 10 miles. Make sure this thing's still recording since I touched the mic. Yep, good to go. So, yeah, I've kind of already run out of things to do around the house. You know, I keep my house in a certain type of order so that I can organize things sort of on the fly. When I used to have my usual days off, I would kind of do, you know, one big organization, or at least just like a, what's it called? Like a maintenance style organization. So I basically keep my house organized all the time. And there's only, even though this kind of contradicts what I said yesterday, there's only so many times you can rearrange everything. When you do have OCD, you can certainly do things like that over and over and over again, but that dopamine release isn't quite the same. If you're not actively going through drawers, moving things around, throwing things away, then the diminishing returns are pretty exponential. You know, you go over the same room twice, and, you know, it's just like, well, I mean, nothing changed since the last time I did it, so this isn't all that captivating or invigorating. Anyway, a little chilly this morning. I think it was about, I don't remember if it said it was 44 or if it was 40. I think it was 44 when I left, but got my fleece jacket on, which I'm sure I'll probably have to shed later in the afternoon, but it feels good for now. And put some lotion and chapstick on my face this morning because I've been getting some pretty dry skin up there. My friend James is or was sick recently, and I hung out with him a day before he really got sick, and then I guess I saw him the day of his official sickness becoming full-blown. And so there's a chance that I guess that I could have caught something from him. I don't really feel sick or anything, but, you know, just with contagions in mind, I'm hoping I stay strong, don't get sick. Who knows what the incubation period is? It seems like it's probably about 3 or 4 days, considering when he came back from his vacation, when he ended up getting sick. So, if I do get sick, it'll probably be at the beginning of next week, and that'll give me like a week to recover before I hit the trail. So, you know, I suppose that's good timing. that would force me to take a rest more so than I plan on doing. You know, I have a couple friends I'd still like to meet with before, a couple of in the perimeter friends. So I have a few more walks in mind, but I'm really grasping at straws and I'm pretty ready to get out there. Just, you know, again, I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. There's only so many times walking on the unfinished belt line that can be interesting. Got some roofers. Roofers be roofing. Nice. Heard that's hard work. Probably is. So, anyway, woke up this morning like 8:30 or 8:40 maybe, 8:37, 8:40. Got up, had my coffee, checked my mails. It's kind of sad to find that the YouTube to MP3 website that I usually visit doesn't seem to be functioning, which I suppose isn't a huge surprise necessarily, considering I think the legal status of that website is somewhat questionable. So there's a chance that that's come to an end of an era, and so I won't be able to listen to Radiohead this morning. I don't think I ever bought OK Computer, the album. I've had it for years and years. I think I might have originally gotten it as a burned CD, but I had a very strong Radiohead period in my life where I just completely devoured their entire discography, which wasn't hard to do. Sort of coincided with me biking and also having my first love in, I guess, like sophomore year of high school. And back then, I think my favorite album was probably Pablo Honey, which is pretty different from everything else that came after it. I think it was their first album, and it doesn't feel like unrefined or anything. It feels like they really did a good job making that record, and it's definitely characteristically Radiohead. But especially looking at everything that came after, you think Kid A and Hail to the Chief and stuff like that. There's just a big departure from like that kind of pure rock style that Pablo Honey had to the more electronically influenced albums that came after. And I think they've kind of weaved in and out of that general like back and forth sine wave since that time, because I think In Rainbows is a little bit more rocky. I still haven't really listened to their probably the last two albums for no particular reason other than I think they were known to be a little bit less energetic, and since I typically listen to music while I'm biking, it just didn't really appeal to me. But maybe now that I am into walking, I could actually get behind that. So it's too bad, because I found this YouTube video where this person, they seem to combine OK Computer and In Rainbows, so that track 1 of OK Computer would play, and then track 1 of In Rainbows would play, and then track 2 of OK Computer, and track 2 of In Rainbows, and so on. So it was intriguing. I was like, I wonder why they did this. I don't know what the connection between the two albums is necessarily, but I was excited to listen to it because, you know, I don't think you would get listening fatigue in the same way if it was cutting back and forth between two different albums, because I've certainly listened to OK Computer enough to, well, it's funny, there are no surprises on that album for me, which is funny because that's one of the song titles on that album. But interspacing it with In Rainbows, which is an album I'm familiar with, but not as familiar with, that would have been fun. So check back later with that website, who knows. It looked like the domain had just been completely removed. It wasn't getting like this domain is available for purchase message. I was getting a cannot connect, like a, I don't know what error message that is, like a 502 or something like that, or 500, I don't know. Connection timed out. Not a good sign for the health of a website. But fair enough. What can you do? Cleared all my cache and cookies on my own side, and I didn't do anything. Opened different browsers, didn't do anything. So this doesn't seem to be an issue on my end, which makes sense. No other websites gave me any difficulty this morning. So here I am, unfinished Beltline for the 10 millionth time, and I am planning on walking over to where Lindsay Glass works sometime this week. Hopefully she'll be there. That'd be a shame. Walk all the way over there and she's not even there. And potentially walking to see my friend Noah. I haven't seen his new house, but I think it's slightly close to the perimeter or slightly outside of it. He's got like a big yard, and it looks like the house is probably like a 2-story sort of suburb style. He's got a dog that he seems to really love, which makes me happy. It'd be fun to walk over there and see him. Nice and sunny day today. Looks like there isn't much of a chance of rain for the next couple few days. I think the next real time it's supposed to rain is the day that I leave for the trail, which is extremely fitting, and it actually mirrors how it was last time when Ben and I went out. It rained pretty much the entire time. We, I guess for the first 2 days, I don't think it rained much after that. I think it was pretty dry, but it was a seriously harsh introduction to the whole thing. The thing about rain is that it keeps you warm, or at least it can. It's sort of an insulating factor, so if you're out in the winter and it's raining, it will be warmer than if you were out in the winter and it was cloudless, just by the mere fact that there are clouds to hold in some of that warmth. And typically when it rains, it's a bit warmer than it is if there were no clouds. A bit warmer than it would be if there were no clouds. Taking a bit of a pit stop. It's funny because actually today, this walk might end up being longer than the walk to Lilburn. The thing about the Lilburn walk, though, I guess, was that it was in one continuous direction. This one obviously is an out and back. So if it were a straight line, I could go out to Lilburn again. Not that I'd really want to. There was nothing wrong with that trip or that route, but it's just, there's nothing to it. I've been out there a million times on my bike, so there's no need to repeat that, especially considering it was like a 7.5 hour day. But today, I'm hoping to get home around 5 or 6 after all is said and done. I'm going to be picking up some groceries, some more kimchi, some fish, some other things. I suppose next week I'll need to, at some point, probably closer to the end of the week, pick up the food that I'll be starting the trail with. Which, that should be interesting to see how all that kind of shakes out. My thought, I think I probably already discussed this, so apologies for repeating it, but, at this point I kind of am just on repeat. But ramen, tuna, peanut butter, honey, maybe some nuts, not really sure. I certainly won't be going for like light food. The whole concept of light, like, ultra light and trying to be as light as possible, it all makes sense. I get it. I understand why that's an emphasis for people. Obviously, the lighter your pack is, the less it encumbers you walking. But for me, again, repetition, I've said this a million times, but durability and sustainability is what I'm after. I've been walking with my pack, and it's really actually done me quite well to walk with that pack. I really do think that my right shoulder blade has been strengthened by the exercise, pretty much because I keep breaking it down and then forcing my body to rebuild it. I actually have some multivitamins. I should probably take one of those. But in any case, I'll be taking them out on the trail. And it's probably more necessary to have those out there, considering that I will not potentially be eating the most nutrient-dense foods. But, yesterday with Charlie. We got done with our walk around 3:30, and I was pretty hungry, and I was ready to eat, but I thought it was a little bit too early, especially because if I was going to go ahead and cook, I'd probably go ahead and have a beer. And once I've had a beer, I certainly, it's kind of the kibosh on the rest of the day. So I went ahead and swept and raked the outdoor area. Having chopped that final log, there was a lot of debris that had made its way into the actual backyard area, and I like to keep that clean. There's this like special moment that I get to have every time that I do rake and sweep the backyard, where I look out on it and it's all clean and pristine. And I typically like this feeling most right at about twilight, where I look out there and the sun is setting and the string lights in the backyard are on and everything just looks really nice. In my mind, it's sort of akin to those Japanese Zen gardens where you will rake the sand to be like in a certain shape around the rocks and everything. And part of that practice is also letting it return to chaos after, as a human, you've gone through and forced order onto it, letting it return to its natural, potential energy state where things occur, move everything around. It's just like, there's definitely a spiritual aspect to raking and sweeping. And I'd say there's also a spiritual aspect to washing the dishes, which is another thing I really enjoy doing. And again, I get to admire my backyard from my kitchen when I do the dishes. However, that's usually later at night. So it's darker, so it's a different kind of vibe to it. When I saw my friend Josh yesterday, no, that wasn't yesterday, that was 2 days ago. We talked a little bit about meditation, and I've always been wary of meditation as like a practice in general, because, I don't know, just like the Tao kind of talks about how you can talk about the Tao, but it's not the eternal one true Tao. Similarly, I don't really think that meditation as such is like a necessary or exclusive way to sort of center yourself and I don't know, whatever the goal of meditation is. I think sitting and focusing on breath or reciting a mantra is one way to do it, but it's just such an obvious way to do it. You don't have to do it that way. And it goes back to that art of war, or Zen in the art of archery, or Musashi, whatever that Joe Rogan quote is always referencing when he says, when you understand the way broadly you see it in all things, that's what I'm talking about. Like, if you're sweeping and you're raking, and in that moment you're at peace, then that is meditation. And that's not, Josh wasn't saying that wouldn't be the case, but I think if you're really seeking some sort of peace like state, and you're trying to have it color who you are as a person, you'll find that it pervades all the things that you do. And so having this like concerted time and effort to do something that is otherwise outside of your day-to-day activity or task, it just seems so contrived. And for a long time I've not been a fan of affectation, or wearing certain just affectation itself just are all these artifices. And I feel like meditation, I don't know, it'd be interesting to hear what like a Buddhist monk would say about what I'm saying. It's like, you're sort of like, you're the cliche, if you're a Buddhist monk, the cliche enlightened person. Like, you are the Buddha who we're instructed to kill if we see him on the bridge. You're someone who's like so obviously trying to go for a specific thing. at the exclusion of everything else. So I don't know. It sort of ties into why I don't really like stand-up comedy as such, just because it's so manufactured. It's like rehearsed. I prefer these things that are like authentic and extemporaneous and just come out of nothing and are what they are. They're getting close to the end of the Beltline now. But on a Wednesday, at this time of day, there's not too much going on out here, aside from the construction, which seems to be ubiquitous. So, that got pretty deep. That's kind of my overarching philosophy on everything, just as it applies to those specific things. But maybe I'm also just really stubborn, and I don't want to think that I'm not doing something that would be beneficial, because that would mean that I'm not as smart as I think I am. And that was another thing that Josh and I talked about. We used to spend so much time together back in high school that we actually pretty much got what was effectively palate fatigue for our friendship. And make sure this is still recording. Good. Yeah, so we had basically gotten to the point where we just knew each other so well, and we knew each other's flaws so well, that we couldn't hang out with each other without being annoyed very, very quickly. And it was a shame, because we really did spend like almost every moment that we could together. And, you know, he would, well, I guess he wouldn't take me to school. There was a certain time when his girlfriend took us both to school, and then we'd see each other at school, and then we'd hang out after school. We'd spend the night on the weekends. We went to the same church, which was funny. There's a lot of stories about that church that would make it seem not so church-like if they were divulged, but that's another time. Anyway, Josh and I got to a point where we were just really, really frustrated with each other. Not for any specific thing, but just the presence of one another in each other's company would be aggravating. And I remember when we talked about this, I remember being in my parents' backyard driveway area, and I don't remember who initiated it or how we thought to do it, but we're like, well, let's just say what we're most angry about to each other so that we can like let it breathe, to get it out of our heads. And I remember saying that he seemed to care too much about what other people thought, which was an interesting theme that we were already talking about 2 days ago. And he said that my flaw was that I think I'm always right, which is right. And that's about as genetic and that's about as nature and nurture as it gets for me. I definitely still have that sort of as an underlying thing. I think most people probably do have a certain degree, more or less, to thinking that they're right about something. It'd be pretty disadvantageous if you always thought you were wrong. So, you know, various different ways of having that same kind of feeling. But as far as I recall, as soon as we finally said that, and both really, you know, took a moment to reflect on what the other one was saying, honestly, we were able to move on again and be friends. And that was after like a couple of weeks of some pretty hard times, some lean years, or some lean weeks, really. But you know, our friendship was strong enough to easily survive that, and it was a friendship that had been built, like I was saying, through so many years of time spent, just exorbitant amounts of time. So it was good to see him the other day. It really is interesting how much we've diverged as people and the path that we've taken, and even just in the habits and everything that we've formed over the years. I gave up on music quite a while ago, probably, 3 years ago. Like, just totally just don't play music anymore at all. Don't play guitar, don't play drums. Don't really, I don't work those kind of practices into my life anymore. And it used to be a big part of my life when I was in high school and early college and stuff. I think if I had been around a group of people who maybe were more structured with music in terms of practicing and creating things, maybe that would have kept me there longer or been a little bit more inspirational. But in any case, not to blame others, I ended up just ultimately just devoting all my time and effort toward exercise in various ways. And here I am now, all those years later, out for a 22-mile walk just for fun, to train for what's going to be the biggest exercise endeavor of my life. And similarly, Josh has toured. He's gone on the road with his bands, and they've seen different states and played different venues, and he's lived that lifestyle. And to me, at a certain point, that never really appealed. I certainly didn't really mind playing shows. If anything, I was a little bit nervous and apprehensive about it. The few shows I did play with various groups, it was never something I looked forward to or thrived on in the same way that I've looked forward to and thrived on the various exercises that I do, biking and walking and running and all. So yeah, we're very similar people, but because of our intense similarities, that does make the differences even more stark. Sort of a yin-yang kind of thing. He flips one way and I flip the other, just out of necessity. Otherwise, we'd be the same person. So, yeah, going and hanging out with Noah will be interesting if it happens. He's a hard guy to get a hold of, and I don't want to ever make it feel like he's being pressured. I know he's sort of like a slippery fish, The harder you try to hold on to him, the easier he gets out of your grasp. So I have to put the ball in his court completely. And just kind of, I sent a text this morning, and I won't follow up on it or anything like that. It's just totally his decision. If he wants to meet, he'll tell me when and where. And if he doesn't, then that's fair enough. Gotta respect that. Because he's a cool guy, and I don't want to put him off. So, gotta play by his rules. Almost to the intersection of Glenwood and Moreland. Let's see what my average speed is so far. Seems like it's pretty decent. 3.6. Sweet. And I think that'll probably only go faster from here on out. So, 3.6. I mean, 7 miles every 2 hours. 2, 4, 6, 7. Yeah. So this will be a 5 or 6 hour walk for sure. And I'm thinking I might stop for coffee somewhere around the midpoint after I'm done being at my friend's place. It's funny because this walk really has no purpose. I mean, if you think it's worth it to walk 20 plus miles just to make someone laugh, then you're in line with the way I'm viewing it. But beyond that, I mean, this has no practical purpose. Spring is springing, y'all. So I'll probably go from here and just head on, continue walking with podcasts and music. But I'm happy with this clip, and I'm also happy that it ostensibly has not disappeared or been erased by accident. So score 1 for that. So crossing Moreland now. I'll leave it there, and I'll probably just get back to you tomorrow. Talk to you then. Bye.